Ever had that real gut punch moment? You're looking at your portfolio, checking the ticker again, refreshing the screen,
Right.
and you just kind of whisper, "This can't be right."
Mm-hmm.
Well, for a lot of folks last week, that was Novo Nordisk.
Oof, yeah.
This stock, right,
And-
hailed as the crown jewel of obesity treatment, seemed bulletproof, and then boom, it just imploded. We're talking down over 20% in one day.
One day, and what was it, like 30-something% over the week? Just staggering.
Exactly. So our mission today in this deep dive is to unpack what on earth triggered this bloodbath, understand the factors behind it, and really dig into whether history might be, repeating itself here.
It's a fascinating mission, and particularly interesting because our main source for this actually admits being wrong twice about Novo Nordisk before.
Oh, wow. Wrong twice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is, pretty candid for the investment world. It sets a certain tone, I think. Humble, maybe, but definitely insightful about market dynamics.
That is brave. So, okay, wrong twice. What was the first mistake? You mentioned operational risks were underestimated. How does that even happen with a company this big?
Well, the source suggests there was maybe too much focus on the hype, the Wegovy and Ozempic excitement. And folks kind of missed these creeping operational issues, things like compounded GLP-1 drugs popping up.
Ah, the compounded versions. Right.
Yeah.
Undercutting prices.
Exactly. And then you had generics starting to chip away in the U.S. market, plus pretty significant manufacturing constraints building up.
Okay, so stuff simmering below the surface. Not headline news, but eating away at the edges.
Precisely. That was mistake number one, according to the source, underestimating those operational headwinds.
And the second mistake, dismissing Eli Lilly. How did they manage to surprise everyone and start, as the source puts it, eating Novo's lunch?
Well, while everyone was watching Novo, Lilly was, let's say, quietly making moves, showing really strong clinical data. Their products, Zepbound and Mounjaro, came in with this perception of having an edge in efficacy.
An edge. Okay, so doctors and patients started noticing.
Yeah, it seems so. It just shows how fast leadership can be challenged, right? Even for a giant like Novo.
Definitely. So despite getting it wrong twice before, our source thinks now is the time to look again because this whole situation feels familiar.
Eerily familiar is the term used, that sense of deja vu.
Okay, but before we get into the history lesson, let's nail down the immediate trigger. What exactly sparked this recent plunge? It was guidance cuts, wasn't it?
Bingo, the magic words no investor ever wants to hear, guidance cuts. Novo Nordisk had to slash its sales growth forecast. They went from 13.21%, pretty impressive, down to 8.14%.
Ouch, and operating profit took a hit too.
Big time. Dropped from 16.24% growth expectations down to 10.16%.
See, that's not just numbers changing, that's the whole growth story hitting a speed bump.
A major speed bump.
And for Wall Street, especially with these high-flying stocks, a slowdown isn't just less profit, it's like the narrative breaks.
Sure.
And that can cause a massive sell-off, right? Like slamming the brakes on a roller coaster.
Exactly. It's that disruption to the narrative. And it wasn't just the guidance cut, remember?
Right. Other things were piling on.
Yeah, those compounded GLP-1s we mentioned, they're really undercutting prices now. Plus, you've got governments getting more involved, more regulatory scrutiny.
Okay, so a perfect storm brewing.
You could say that. Lots of uncertainty suddenly swirling around.
And speaking of uncertainty, the timing of the leadership change. Wow. Lars Frugard Jorgensen steps down. Mazur McDowstar takes over just days before this whole meltdown.
Yeah, the timing was, let's say, less than ideal.
Markets hate uncertainty, don't they? And a new CEO walking into collapsing guidance, that's got to be peak uncertainty.
It's pretty much the textbook definition. You can just imagine the questions flying around.
Totally. Is this new person ready? What's the plan? Or, the more cynical take.
Are they just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But maybe those whispers missed the bigger picture. Because the really fascinating part, the core of this deep dive, is how much this feels like 2016 all over again.
That deja vu theme, yeah, it's central. The source really hammers this point. The sell-off feels incredibly similar to what happened nearly a decade ago.
So what was it in 2016? What are the parallels that make it feel so similar?
It's almost uncanny. Back in 2016, the big fear was insulin pricing pressure. Remember that?
Vaguely, yeah. Farmer pricing pressure is always bubbling somewhere.
Well, back then it boiled over for Novo. Investors just ran for the exits. The stock tanked. People basically wrote them off.
And now instead of insulin, it's
GLP-1 competition. That's the new pricing pressure point.
Okay, so different drug class, same fundamental fear. What else?
The mechanics are eerily similar. In both 2016 and now, Guidance gets slashed, sentiment just craters, and the technical charts, straight into oversold territory, screaming sell.
And the analysts, what are they saying now versus then?
It's fascinating. Back then you saw ratings shift from strong buy down to these lukewarm buy ratings, but with little notes like, for patient investors only.
Hedging their bets.
Totally. And the source points out we're seeing that exact same language creeping back in now. It suggests this pattern, maybe an overreaction pattern.
It really does feel like a pattern, like maybe the market psychology just repeats itself. So in 2016, Novo managed to claw its way back, right? How do they do that?
Pipeline. They had key drugs like Tresiba and Victoza basically waiting in the wings, ready to launch and drive new growth once the panic subsided.
Right. So the fundamentals were still there, hidden by the fear. Which brings us to the big question. Can they do it again now?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this is where we need to look past the current panic at the fundamentals and the pipeline today.
Okay, so what's the equivalent of Tresiba and Victoza today? What's in Novo's current pipeline?
Well, they're not standing still. They've got things like an oral version of Wegovy in development, which could be huge. There's another drug called emipritin, plus other treatments for obesity and heart failure, too.
So a decent pipeline. And financially, how are they holding up after this haircut?
Remarkably well, actually. Even after this downturn, they're still boasting something like a 35% operating margin.
35%? Wow. That's incredibly healthy.
Right. That doesn't sound like a company circling the drain. It sounds more like maybe a nasty reset.
A reset in a market that's still projected to be enormous long-term.
Exactly. The projections for obesity treatments are just wild. We're talking a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of 43% through 2034.
43% average growth per year for the next decade.
Yeah. That underlying market opportunity hasn't vanished just because the stock took a nosedive.
Okay, but let's be balanced. It's not all positive. Our source is clear. The risks are real, sharp, even, like this lawsuit.
Correct. There's a U.S. class action lawsuit. It alleges Novo misled investors about, the forecast risks. That's definitely a shadow hanging over them.
That's significant. But, I mean, big pharma often faces lawsuits and regulatory heat, right? Is this time different, or is the market maybe overreacting to typical industry challenges?
That's a fair question. While they're used to navigating regulations, the source does point to ramping government pricing pressure. Specifically mentions the Trump administration's interest in potentially forcing drug price parity with other countries.
Okay. That could directly hit the bottom line if it happens.
Yeah.
That's a real threat.
It is. And then there's the competition. Eli Lilly's products are seen as having that efficacy edge, which pulls doctors and patients.
Right. And those compounded drugs are still flooding the market.
Still flooding the market, eroding Novo's pricing power. So, yeah, the risks are definitely there. You can't ignore them.
So putting it all together, the panic, the history, the fundamentals, the risks, where does this leave you, the listener, if you're an investor or just watching this unfold?
Well, it really sets up the classic investor's dilemma, doesn't it? For the diamond hands crowd folks who can stomach volatility, the technical charts are practically screaming oversold. There are potential support levels analysts are watching, like $36, maybe $29. And the thinking is, hey, if history repeats, buying into this panic could pay off massively down the line.
Could be the operative word. But what if you're, allergic to this kind of volatility?
Then the advice is probably pretty simple. Sit this one out. Wait for the dust to settle. Wait for some stabilization.
Because this stock is definitely a roller coaster right now. You need a strong stomach.
For sure. But it's interesting. Our source, despite admitting being wrong twice before, seems to believe that fundamentally storms pass. The argument is that companies with solid fundamentals, strong pipelines, and dominant market positions like Novo tend to come out stronger eventually. And Novo does have a history of proving doubters wrong.
It all comes back to that 2016 parallel then, this huge 2025 sell-off.
Yeah.
Maybe it is just another 2016 moment. Painful now, maybe terrifying if you're holding it, but potentially a golden entry point if you look back at a few years.
That seems to be the core thesis, that the market consistently overcorrects. Fear trumped fundamentals in 2016, and maybe it's happening again. It really highlights how much investor psychology, not just the raw data, drives these huge swings and how those swings can create opportunities.
So maybe the final thought for you to ponder is this. Beyond the charts and the numbers, what does it really signal when market sentiment flips so drastically? And how often, truly, do those underlying fundamentals win out over short-term panic in the long run? Because if history does rhyme, as they say, this current crash, this pain, might just be the setup for Novo Nordisk's next big run. Makes you think about those market patterns, doesn't it? How today's challenges might just foreshadow tomorrow's opportunities.